As a widow in a foreign land, Ruth was destitute. After she earned the favor of Boaz, she risked her reputation by asking him to care for her and her mother-in-law. Today on Truth for Life, Alistair Begg explains how the grace and provision of Boaz foreshadowed Jesus, our Redeemer. The dramatic story unfolds in Ruth chapter 3, and we begin with prayer.
Father, thank you that all of the circumstances of our lives, all of the apparent inconsequential meetings are really ordained by your mighty providence. We're grateful for them all, and we pray that you will be our teacher now from the Bible for Jesus' sake. Amen. Ruth nestles into the time period when the judges ruled, which is around approximately 1200 years BC. We have been discovering some very important and practical lessons that have emerged from looking at this section of the Bible. We dealt last time with the opening little section. It was all that we really had time for of chapter 3. And we discovered that Naomi's concern was in chapter 3 as it had been in chapter 1 and verse 11, that in this instance, her daughter-in-law, Ruth, would be provided for, that she would be settled in her life. And there is a lesson in this that I failed to point out and I don't want us to miss. Namely, that Naomi could, at this juncture in her life, have become a kind of miserable character. She does say that there is a bitterness that is attached to her, but it is beginning to dissipate. And she doesn't actually convey to us, as we read of her life, the kind of preoccupation that can be the part and parcel of someone who has been bereaved in a particular way as she has. She has lost her husband and she has lost both of her sons. But apparently her preoccupation now is not with her constantly referencing the fact of her loss, but is of her genuine interest in seeing others who have been similarly bereaved settled in their life. And it is a reminder to us in passing that the best proof which you and I can give of our affection for someone whom we loved and who has been taken from us is to show proper attention to the happiness and the comfort of the persons who were dearest in life to the one who has been taken. And the same is true for the bereaved. In the loss, for example, of your mother, then she may have had a particular friend. Then instead of sitting in a pool of pity, agonizing over your own loss, recognize that this friend of your mother's has also had a great loss, and you may now show your esteem and affection for your mother by caring most directly for the one who is also aware of loss. And also you recognize that Naomi wasn't one of these old women who grudge younger women the comforts and advantages which they themselves are now too old to enjoy or to relish. You find that in people. They grow old, and instead of being able to rejoice in what is happening to those coming up behind them, they're constantly bemoaning the fact that it isn't happening to them, or that they are no longer able to enjoy it, or that they no longer have the companionship. Now, dear friends, this is a lesson first to me, and if it means something to you, then make a note of it. But what we will be in that arena of our lives when we get there is simply an extension of what we are now. And if we are self-possessed now, if we are totally self-focused now, then we will be even worse if we make it to 70. So let us learn then not to grudge to the generation coming up behind us the comforts and the benefits that they may enjoy because of their age and because of their opportunity. Let us learn from Naomi. She's not sitting in the house bemoaning the fact of her widowhood. She's saying to her daughter-in-law, now come on, you need to be settled in your life. And here I have some plans and ideas for you. And why don't you go ahead and do this and follow my advice and proceed on the journey? And you will remember from last time that she gave very clear directions as to how she should go and approach Boaz, exercising his responsibilities on the threshing floor and then finally falling asleep after his meal. And I made quite a play on the fact that parents have a responsibility to usher their children into a framework in which they may find the kind of spouse that will be compatible for them in their lives. And I said it in such a way as to perhaps create the impression in the minds of some that parents have a legitimate right to choose for their children the kind of husband or wife that they, the parents, would like. No, they don't. No, we don't. We have a responsibility to encourage our children, all things being considered, to marry the kind of fellow or girl most agreeable to themselves. The kind of fellow or girl who will make them glad. And this idea of, well, I never had a ball player, and so my daughter is going to marry a ball player because I want somebody to go out in the backyard and throw and pitch to. You may want to do that. You may have to wait until your grandchildren, Grandpa, because that may not be just exactly what your daughter has in mind. And the fact that you think that she needs to marry this character because of the way he's put together, because he's always doing stuff like this and everything and pressing like this, she doesn't find that remotely attractive. So send him home and listen to your daughter. This is the flip side of what I was saying last time, because some of you are dangerous, you know. You get one little thing like this, and you're off into some kind of trip. And that is not what we're saying at all. Gentle persuasions and serious advice may frequently be put to good use. Compulsion belongs not to a parent, but to a tyrant. Compulsion belongs not to a parent, but to a tyrant. Now that is just to redress any danger that the pendulum went out too far. Now when you come to verse 6 and 7, you realize that as a result of Naomi's initiative and Ruth's obedience, the latter, namely Ruth, has placed herself in a situation of extreme vulnerability. Because where is she? Well, she is in a barn, and the barn is filled with what? Filled with men. So here is a single woman in a barn filled with men. Furthermore, in a barn filled with men who are apparently in exceptionally good spirits. As a result, first of all, of having completed their task, namely the bringing in of the harvest, and secondly, as a result of having concluded their meal. And now, having been successful in their endeavors and rejoicing in their relaxations, they're all beginning to lie down and find their bed for the night, throwing themselves down on the barn floor. And of course, the instruction that has been given to Ruth, and which she has been in accord with, is that she should go down to the threshing floor, not interrupt Boaz while he's having his meal, but make sure that she finds out where it is that he lies down, because once he's gone off to sleep and under cover of darkness, she's actually going to show up and uncover his feet. And Naomi doesn't want her uncovering the wrong feet, because that could lead to all kinds of disasters that are not planned, at least in the mind of Naomi. So Ruth was vulnerable. She was vulnerable in relationship to her safety, because she has no say in what these guys are going to do. And she was vulnerable also in relationship to her motives, because there's no saying what people are going to say about a young girl who goes down into a barn of men in the middle of the night. In fact, the kind of things that most people are going to say are not the kind of things that you want written on your resume or send home in a note to your mother. In fact, the more I've thought about this during the week, I'm not sure I like Naomi's plan. Now, I don't think she cares whether I like it or not, and I'm not sure that you're particularly interested, but I just wanted you to know. In fact, I think as much as I am commending Ruth for her obedience, I was hoping during the week that she might have had just a little bit more savvy herself. That she might have challenged this notion. She might have said, you really want me to go down in there and go in the middle of the night in amongst a bunch of men in a barn? Because after all, think about this. I'm not sure that we would want to use this now as a model for giving advice to our daughters about finding a husband. Would we? Any who would see me afterwards, we need to have a serious talk. Or that we would use it as a strategy, calling our daughters at university and saying to them, listen, I just read an amazing story in Ruth chapter 3. I've got an idea for you. You might want to go down to one of the men's dorms and see if you can uncover somebody's feet. Okay, you see why I'm interacting with Naomi's plan here. I'm saying this is an interesting plan. It's a reminder to us as well that everything that is described in the Bible is not prescribed in the Bible. And the reason I mention this is because people wrest the scriptures to their own destruction. In other words, they fiddle about with the Bible and try and make it say what they want it to say, and teenage girls and teenage boys are masterful at it. They may never have read their Bible in 17 weeks, but as soon as they find a passage like this, they're off to the races. Now they're phenomenally interested in Ruth chapter 3. And they've got all kinds of reasons as to why they're going to a party over at Rodney's house, and they're planning on uncovering a few people's feet. Now, unless you understand what you're doing with the Bible, you're going to be completely at sea. That's why I mentioned this to you. The circumstances for that to take place would have to be the same as the circumstances here, 1200 BC. The good news is they're not. That's your first out, Dad. The Jewish laws would have to be in place concerning marriage. They're not. That's your second out. Therefore, we need to apply another principle in relationship to those who may be tempted to take this descriptive passage and say, I think this is a very interesting strategy for interpersonal relationships and for getting closer to the opposite sex. And we've developed a whole booklet on this now. And, I can just see within a very short period of time, somebody's got a tape series on this called Uncovering the Feet of Your Future Spouse. And it becomes a whole deal. No, what we have to do is recognize that the Bible says that we should abstain from all appearance of evil. We should abstain from all appearance of evil. So you tell your daughter, you better come home, honey. Oh, I'm not doing anything, Dad. I know you're not. You got to abstain from all appearance of evil. Well, I think it's okay. There's lots of people there. There's lots of other people's parents there, and blah, 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 and it's always the same old nonsense. Yeah, you better come home, honey. You got to abstain from all appearance of evil. Yeah, well, there's a thing the other night with Ruth, and she went down in the barn with all the guys and everything. Why can't I do that? Well, because this isn't 1200 BC, and this is not the laws of the Levirate, and just shut up and get in the car. You see, even good men and women can give bad examples, right? You can get a bad example from a good person. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're a good person that set a bad example, and bad examples, when they come from good people, are not to be imitated. Therefore, that is why, as we trace our line through here, it's very important for us to recognize that behind this process here, behind this unfolding drama, and certainly this is the high point of the story of Ruth here in chapter 3, behind these highly unusual actions, what we discover is a sincere trust in Yahweh's care and protection. Naomi is trusting in God. Ruth is trusting in God. Boaz is trusting in God. And although the events and the actions and the details seem distinctly strange to our 21st century way of thinking, nevertheless, here God providentially overrules all of this for the well-being of his people. And so it is that Ruth proceeds with the plan. I'll do whatever you say, verse 5. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. Notice in passing that as Ruth proceeds with the plan, she gives to us here a wonderful illustration of the fact that you cannot necessarily deal with all of the implications and all of the eventualities of a course of action before you embark upon a course of action. Were there elements of this that were unknown to Ruth? Yes, many of them. In fact, it didn't go very far before the message was, he will tell you what to do. So on the strength of the word of Naomi, trusting in the providence of God, she proceeds with the plan. If she had waited until she had all the details, she would never have gone ahead. Now in this, there is a point in passing as well, a reminder to each of us, that there are occasions in our Christian life when we cannot see much beyond the next step. At that point, we have to trust God and venture out on the basis of His Word. It's not uncommon to find well-meaning believers who frankly have made very little progress in their Christian life. They're safe, they're under control. There is not very much about them that smacks of the supernatural. There's nothing very much about them that says, I really trusted God. I went out on the limb. Because all of the time they're spending their lives in the waiting room. And they're in their waiting room and they're waiting to make sure that all of the implications of their actions are detailed for them, that the eventualities of what would happen if they went there, and then of course if the road divided here and they took a right, then that would of course place them here, which would in turn make it difficult for them to get there, and so on. These people are absolutely neutralized. They want details before they're prepared to trust God. They're so afraid of making mistakes that they never make anything. They're so afraid of going in the wrong direction that they go in no direction. Ruth didn't know but beyond wash your face, put on your clothes, put some perfume on, uncover his feet, and then take it from there. That's not exactly what you would call a rock-solid plan, is it? There's a bit of uncertainty there, and yet she proceeds. And I want to say to some of you, you need to start to think about this. You need to start to dream dreams. You need to start to think about possibilities. You need to look up and beyond the horizon. Give up your small ideas, your paltry schemes, the safe territory. You see, provided your life is in a right relationship with God, provided you honestly want to go His way and not your own way, then the Bible gives us all kinds of permission to launch out in faith, to take risks for His sake, even to get it wrong and to fail and to have to come back. But Ruth is a wonderful example of somebody who, as soon as she got the rudiments of it together, she said, fine, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. What was she going for? She was going for the future. She was going for obedience. She was going on the basis of trust. May I ask you, what are you going for? What are you going for? What is there about your Christian life at the moment that speaks only of faith? Something that you are contemplating doing, a place that you are planning to go, a venture that you are undertaking, someone to whom you're going to speak, whatever it may be, that is all about faith. You don't know the eventualities and you don't know the implications. To the extent that the answer to that is, frankly, I haven't got a clue, then the Word of God comes to us with great resonance, doesn't it? Lest we spend our lives very safe, very comfortable, very cold, very refrigerated, stuck in the waiting room. And what is true of individuals is certainly true of a church. Wesley, when he was asked about, the danger of adventuresome faith and presumption, well, this sounds a lot like presumption. No, this is adventuresome faith. Well, it's and so on. He said, listen, if you're talking colleagues for me, I'd rather have one fellow who was so on fire that I had to constantly cool him down than to have 10 unenthusiastic men whom I had constantly to warm up. I'd rather have one guy that I had to say, hey, wait a minute, than 10 guys who say, did you ever think of this? Did you ever think of that? Did you ever think of this? Would you like to try that? Put your perfume on, get your clothes on, wash your face, go down, uncover his feet. Okay, I'm on my way. And verse 9 to 13, then you have the dialogue in the darkness. She goes down. He's lying at the far end of the grain pile. Not exactly what you would call a romantic picture, is it? He's got all his clothes on, presumably. Who knows how big his belly is or as a result of all the food he's been eating. He's certainly pushing grain around like crazy. There's no guarantee. I think he looks like Topol in Fiddler on the Roof myself. That's him, you know. So there he is, snoring down at the end of the grain pile. And Ruth, because her mother-in-law said, is going down, and next she has to uncover his feet, which she does. And in the middle of the night, verse 8, something startled the man, and he turned over, and he discovered a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. He said, "Well, what do you mean, who are you?" he asked. He knew who Ruth was. Listen, have you ever wakened up in the middle of the night and asked your wife who you are? I've had my wife come in the bedroom in the middle of the night and I go, "Who are you?" "I'm your wife. What are you talking about?" "Oh, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Who are you?" "I'm your servant Ruth," she said. "Wow, okay."
Ending there on a bit of a cliffhanger. You're listening to Truth for Life. Alistair Begg will continue the story tomorrow, so be sure to join us. Our message is titled Ruth Proposes to Boaz. It's part of our series called God of the Ordinary. To go along with this study, we have a book offered today that we're pretty excited about. This is one of our all-time favorite collections of Bible stories for young children. It's titled My Big Book of Bible Stories, and it includes the heartwarming story of Ruth, as well as the story of Daniel in the lion's den, David and Goliath, and several others. In fact, this is a book that Alistair reads to his own grandchildren. My Big Book of Bible Stories retells 17 foundational stories from both the Old and New Testament, all of them beautifully illustrated. We love the book because the content is theologically sound and faithful to Scripture, but it's told in a creative, rhyming way that will engage your preschool or early grade school-aged child. My Big Book of Bible Stories comes as an expression of thanks for your support of this nonprofit ministry. When you donate today, be sure to mention that you'd like to receive a copy. Go to truthforlife.org/donate or call 888-588-7884. If you'd rather mail your donation along with your request for the book, our address is Truth for Life, P.O. Box 39 8000, Cleveland, Ohio, 44139. And on behalf of everyone who hears this program each day, thank you for your generous giving that makes it possible. Because of listeners like you, we're able to provide clear, relevant Bible teaching on the radio, on the web, through the Truth for Life mobile app, and via many other listening platforms. We are deeply grateful. Now, we're almost out of time today, but before we close, Alistair has an exciting opportunity he wanted to bring to your attention. Alistair.
Well, thanks, Bob. And if you've yet to book your summer vacation plans, let me invite you to come and join me on an adventure, a cruise to beautiful Alaska. During a 7-day journey, I'll be teaching from the Bible. Laura Story and Michael O'Brien will be leading us in praise, and we'll have a front row seat to view God's creative handiwork, all the way up the northern Pacific, along the Alaskan coastline, and saying together with the psalmist, "How majestic is your name in all the earth." So mark your calendar, plan on coming along. We'll make new friends, grow in our faith, and gain a new appreciation for God's creative power.
You can learn more about how to join Alistair on this trip to Alaska by going online to deeperfaithcruise.com or by calling 855-565-5519. I'm Bob Lepine, hoping you'll join us tomorrow as Alistair continues the story of Ruth and Boaz and the unusual marriage proposal. The message is titled Ruth Proposes to Boaz. We'll hear the conclusion Friday, so be sure to join us. This program features the Bible teaching of Alistair Begg, and it's furnished by Truth for Life, where the learning is for living.